Hello, I'm Amy Lemire. The following video is a portion from a paid retreat I recently hosted called The Best Version of You Success Habits Breakthrough Weekend. The content that I will be delivering in this training session is based on a course I am certified to teach called Habit Finder, in which we study 6 key thought habits. In this particular session, we are going to be focusing on a habit called structure, which is also known as self-discipline. The audience is about 10 adults, working professionals in careers such as IT, sales, marketing, and also administrative support. Thank you for taking your time to review this video as part of my Certified Speaking Professional application process. Okay, good morning, welcome back. Before we start our session today, I often say that this habit that we're about to talk about, of all the 6 habits in Habit Finder, is probably the one that causes us the most challenge, the most anguish, and sometimes the most resistance. But on the other side of that, one thing that I love about this habit called structure is I believe it is also the key to freedom. And I know some of you right now might be wondering, well, how can structure or self-discipline really be the key to freedom? How many of you are thinking that right now? Raise your hands if you feel that way. Okay, yes, thank you. So I'm going to explain to you today that the habit of structure is, number 1, also known as self-discipline, the ability to stay organized, the ability to start and also to finish projects you're working on. It's also the gift of being able to stay the course, no matter what you're working on or what you're focusing on. Now, the reason that it can also be the key to freedom is that what is on the other side of structure is most often the things that we want the most, the things we dream about, the things that we want to achieve. But what happens is we have our own resistance that gets in the way of that. Now, just as a quick example, to make this make a little more sense, is an example, if let's just say that my work day is that I'm going to work today from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I start my day and I make a list of the 6 most important things that I want to get done. And I really think about what those are. It might be phone calls I need to make, it might be projects I need to finish, it might be deadlines that I'm working against, it might be planning for an event like this retreat. And I write that list out. And then as the day goes on, I take time to block out the times. Maybe I have some power sessions blocked in there of when I'm going to work on that PowerPoint presentation, or when I'm going to carve out that time to make the phone calls with some people that I'm talking to about signing up for an event. And I go about my day and I stick to that plan. And then when it's 5 o'clock, I get to close the door to my office. For a lot of us these days, it's our home office. And then I get the freedom of sitting down and having dinner with my husband. You know, maybe we watch one of our TV shows we enjoy watching. We really seem to like Shark Tank, that's one of our favorite shows. And we have that time together to just kind of relax and sit back and just enjoy that peace and that quiet and that connecting with each other time. So that's the way structure can help us have that freedom in the evening to do what we want, enjoy what we want. But let's look at a different scenario. And maybe this might ring true to some of you in your life. I sit down in the morning and the first thing I do is I grab my coffee, I go to my office, and then I jump on social media. And I look at what's going on with my friends, my coworkers, my people, my tribe, and then I just see this text come up on my phone, and it's somebody that I forgot to get back to yesterday, and I start texting them a message. And then the next thing I know, my phone starts ringing, and I take the call, and then I remember, oh gosh, I had this conference call I've got to get on in 10 minutes, and I jump over to that conference call. And before I know it, I look at my watch, and it's already 1 o'clock, and I'm asking myself, where did the day go? It's already 1 o'clock, and I really don't feel like I've gotten anything done. So then I quickly scramble, and I put together that 6 most important things to-do list, and I start chipping away at that, and then I look at my clock again, and it's 3:30. And then it's 5 o'clock, and oh my gosh, I didn't get those 4 things I really needed to get done today and hit those deadlines. And It's 5:30. And my husband's downstairs wondering when we're gonna have our dinner. And then it gets to be 6 o'clock. And I think if I could just have 5 more minutes to get these things done, then everything's gonna be great. And by the time I walk downstairs, it's 7 o'clock. And he reminds me that he's gotta go off and he's gonna go play his football, AKA soccer, as we call it in the United States. And it's 9 o'clock and I still feel bad because I didn't get those last things done on that list I wanted. And then it's time to go to sleep. And that freedom, that time to relax, that time to decompress has just gone away into thin air. How many of you can relate to that story? Okay, so the reason I bring this up, he can relate to it, of course, more than anybody. But the reason I bring this up is that when I talked about structure is the key to freedom, it really is the key to freedom. If we can make it a habit to quiet that noise in our mind that says, I need to check social media, I need to jump on that call, I need to just jump into everything without really having a plan, that is most often what gets in the way of us getting to what we really want, which what we really want, I think, is family time, quality time, quiet time, decompression time. So that's really the premise of this habit that I really want to make sure that we all understand. So now, I want to take a few minutes and explain a little bit more about what structure is and what it is not. So in your book, if you turn to habit number 4, you'll see structure, and you can go ahead and turn the page, and we're going to go into the introduction. And also, if you have a copy of your Habit Finder assessment in front of you, I invite you to take a look at that and turn to page number 8 of that habit assessment. On the habit assessment, it should say at the top of your page, structure. And as I mentioned, throughout this weekend, is that when you look at that score that you have on your Habit Finder assessment, it's not a good or bad or right or wrong. It's not like a grade that you get in high school or college when you take an exam or write a paper. This is where you stand on a scale of 1 to 100. So we want to remember that when we have a score of 85 or above, it means that we have healthy thought habits in this area of our thinking called structure. But when we see below 85, and the further we go below 85, it means this could be an area where, let's just say, there's some opportunity for improvement. So I invite you now to just take a look at your assessment, and this is for your eyes only. I'm not asking you to raise your hand and share what your scores are right now, but just take a look at where you stand and just have some awareness. Maybe that story I just shared with you, which quite honestly I've faced many times in my life, maybe it resonated with you. Maybe you thought, I feel like that most days. Maybe by the end of the day, I feel like a chicken with my head cut off. Does anyone ever feel like that? Like, I've done so much today, but what have I really gotten accomplished? Okay, well, there's good news. Once we get through the session today, my vision and my goal for you is you to have a sense of where structure is in your life and what small 2mm steps you can take to take that up to the next level wherever you stand today. So the first thing that I'd like to do is on page number 6 of your Habit Finder binder is where you will see where you stand with your score, but then on the other side of that page, you'll see page 7. And what I want to do first is I really want to talk about what does the healthy habit of structure look like? What are the 6 key characteristics of structure, self-discipline, that you can follow so that you don't feel like the chicken with your head cut off at the end of the day, okay? So the first one of those is, I am disciplined. And Elizabeth, would you like to read that to us?
I surrender my resistant and often rebellious nature and willingly submit to rules, order, and structure that add value to my life.
Thank you. So when we look at this habit, the first part of it is we are going to say to ourselves, we are either resistant or we are undeviating. So if we are resistant often means that we maybe don't like to follow the rules. We like to do things our own way. And being resistant also means that we can easily succumb to messes in our life. Everything from maybe we go over the speed limit and we get a ticket, or maybe we decide to do something our own way and it backfires and it causes a mess. That is the downside of not being disciplined. Now, on the other side of that is undeviating. Undeviating is when I am just so rigid and I am so going to follow exactly what everything says that if the rule changes or the guideline changes, I'm so fixated on the way it has to be that I'm not willing to shift or move. But what we want to be instead is if we're disciplined, it means that I honor and I respect guidelines and rules, and I understand that rules are in place to protect me. Does everybody relate to that? Okay. Does anybody want to share any takeaways from that thought? Caroline.
I know for me personally, I fall more resistant to rules. And I find this interesting because based on another test that I had taken, I can't recall the name of it, but structure was something that had been pointed out that when I'm really defined by rules, I feel like my creativity is kind of confined, but I think I have to find a way to working within the lines while still allowing my creativeness and spontaneity to be.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. And I love what you just said, because I do feel like we do have a belief, some of us might believe that if I follow the rules, that means that my creativity is cut off. And so what I invite you to consider instead is that creativity and self-discipline are two separate concepts. And I think that we all of us as human beings we all have a natural rebellious tendency, right, within ourselves. We all like freedom. And I think sometimes we might confuse freedom with discipline. And so I invite all of us to just consider that creativity is flow, creativity is allowing, and creativity is letting our ideas and the way that we want to see things and how things should be in our lives, we allow that to flow. But then the discipline means I'm also going to take the steps necessary to create. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So they tie together hand in hand. They don't push against each other. Does that resonate with everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Yes, Nigel.
I was told once, rules are there to be broken and laws are there to be obeyed.
Okay.
So I tend to change rules for laws.
Okay.
Because laws are in every country and rules are different in each country. And I like break the rules, so I keep to the law.
Okay, I understand that.
So it doesn't suppress my creativity.
Okay, and you know that saying that rules are meant to be broken? I think that how many of you have heard that before?
Oh,
have you heard that saying? Okay, yeah, and I have too, and you know, I also have a rebellious nature, and I told a lot about my story all weekend long, and a lot of you know me outside of this retreat, but I think what I've come to learn is that most of the times I break the rules, or I deviate, or maybe breaking the law, you know, whatever that is. When I do that, what I often find is it eventually will catch up with us. Right. And then that ends up costing me time, money, hassle, distraction. So I think what we want to do, to Nigel's point, and even though we've heard that saying rules are meant to be broken, is that maybe we want to ask ourselves, is the price worth it? And I invite you all to consider that too. Is it really worth it to break the rule or the law or whatever it might be? Because in my experience, it does just lead to more of those elements I just mentioned that I think personally, I would prefer to have more time, more energy, and less distractions in my life than more. Do you all feel that same way? Okay, thank you. That's a great share. I've heard that before myself. Now, the next quality of being disciplined that I'd like to talk about now is I am respectful. So, Caroline, would you like to read that one to us?
Mm-hmm. I recognize the practical value in following rules and taking direction. I respect people in positions of authority.
Thank you. Okay, so when we see I am respectful, what we want to do with this particular quality is the following. we can either be resentful or we can be submissive. So if your assessment is leaning over towards resentful, that means we often resent authority. Maybe it's a politician, maybe it's a leader at the company you're working at, maybe it's someone that's in charge. And what I found in my life is that even if I disagree with that person, even if I don't feel that, that same respect I might feel that I believe that person deserves, is I ask myself, how would I feel if I was that leader, if I was that president, if I was the person in charge? How would I feel if the whole group didn't respect me? So whether I agree or disagree, and I think politics is a really great example. Again, this isn't a political discussion right now, but maybe it's a leader of our country today, maybe it's the last leader of our country before. But whether you respect them or don't respect them, they are the leader of the country. And the thing I remind myself is they're doing the best that they can. And my personal philosophy is I believe that all leaders deserve respect if they are standing up for humanity, especially. And again, we know there are leaders of countries right now in this world that might not be doing things that we all agree with. But in general, and that would be, that's going to be a different situation there. But in general, respecting authority, I believe, is something that if we do that, we will get that same respect when we are the leader. Now, the other side of that is submissive. Submissive is when we do see somebody that is in power, and maybe instead of questioning or finding out, or we know that what they're doing is hurting humanity, for instance. If we bow down to that person and if we run away in fear versus having a confrontation discussion with those leaders, I'm not going to mention names, but there's somebody in this room that I've talked to quite often that says, sometimes my boss says things to me that really make me feel belittled, or it doesn't empower me. And this person told me, I went and I had a conversation with that person about it. Instead of being submissive and just continuing to take that treatment, this person had the courage and determination to have a conversation with them. So that's something you can always do instead of just being submissive and letting it happen. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, excellent.
So on the
Yes.
point more toward the resentful, and mine goes a little bit that way, and I understand why. It's that I'm resentful because they forget about my department. I think that that's fair in this case. I mean, they don't give me the money to run the department. They don't tell me anything about stuff I need to know to run the department. And that's bad business.
Right.
And so, I'm resentful.
Okay. And have you had a conversation with the people that?
Yeah.
Okay. And nothing's changed.
Just
Okay.
as I'm going over. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I don't want to stay there.
Exactly. And so I think there also comes a point, I appreciate Sue bringing this up, is I think there also comes a point when we need to remember we all have choices. If we work in a place where our ideas are unheard, or we work in a place where we see mistreatment, or we see that there's not an allocation of resources to uplift humanity, and that's what our job is, there may become a time and a place where we have to ask ourselves, is this where I want to stay? Which is a tough decision. What was that?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I appreciate, that's a great example. So we have a choice. If we can't change, or the situation can't change, or the feedback doesn't change the person or the leader, it may be an opportunity for us just to say, maybe it's time that I look for a new opportunity. And we all have that choice. We all have that freedom, which again, remember, structure is the key to freedom, right? As we talked about in the beginning. So the next example,
Angel
yes.
has
I
a-
have.
Oh, please, Angel, yes.
So I think that when we were going through my habit finder results, this was the one that stuck when we were having the discussion about it, and I'm like, that's not who I am, it's not. But in this case, when I took this, it was at the exact time that I had had the conflict with my current, my boss's boss. But he had been my boss, and I was really at that pivotal point of feeling very devalued, and like I wasn't going where I wanted to go, and so hearing it now, like I understand why I scored that way at the point that I took the test, but I don't think that that's really me on a regular basis.
Right.
Right,
It was absolutely pivotal to the moment.
Right.
exactly. And so thank you for reminding us of that. You know, as a reminder, when we took your assessments, it's a snapshot of where your feelings are, where your habits of thinking were right in that moment. So if, to Angel's point, if you were dealing with a struggle with a boss or a coworker or somebody else, that is going to reflect on your assessment. And so I think just to remember that when you see something like that, remembering that you know, our thought habits, one thing we've not talked about in this program just this weekend is that our brains have a quality called neuroplasticity, which means with focus, I say it's awareness, it's accountability, and it's taking action. When we can start to change our thought habits, our brain has a quality called neuroplasticity, which means we can change these habits. So I love what you shared, because having known you now for 2-3 months, I have seen that you and I've had some pretty deep discussions, and you have made some changes, and you've also taken some new steps in your career.
Right.
And that now is probably, if you took the assessment today, that probably wouldn't show up.
Right. That was good.
Thank you, that's a great example. Okay, any other questions? I know we're talking about a lot here. Okay, great. So the next habit of thinking is I am analytical. And Nigel, would you like to read that to us?
Yes, I can quietly control my mind. I see challenges as opportunities and use my mind to effortlessly explore possibilities and find solutions that add value.
Thank you. The most often shift on this habit we see is the bar goes over to the right and it says obsessive. Do any of you have obsessive on your assessments? Okay. I've been doing Habit Finder assessments and reviews as a coach now for about 4 years, and I will tell you, I think probably 95% of us in this world have obsessive. And what does it really mean? You know, the nice definition that Nigel just read, but really, let's translate this a little bit. What it really means is our mind is full of ideas, new ways to do things, creative thoughts, and it gets to the point where it gets to be noise, right? Do any of you ever feel like you have a lot of noise in your mind? Okay, so if you feel like that, the question I always ask people for this one is, how do you quiet your mind? How do you quiet your mind?
That's why I had out my vision board, calm your mind.
Yes.
There's lots of noise and distractions and things going around, and things you can do like meditation, or try and find peaceful places to read, or just to try and take yourself away from an environment that might be there, or focus on one thing only. And so there's a number of things that you can do to try and quiet the mind. For my point.
Physical exercise.
Physical exercise, meditation. What are some of the other ideas that you could do to quiet your mind?
I love taking a walk in nature.
Taking a walk in nature,
It's
yes.
very grounding for me in general. It's just very peaceful.
Love that.
Yeah, this morning.
What about yoga? Some of you tried yoga for the first time this weekend. Did that quiet your mind?
My whole body.
Your whole body, yes. Everything. And that was the reason that I planted those morning rituals into this weekend, whether it was coming to the yoga class, or maybe sat in your room and read, or maybe you went outside for a walk before the temperature dropped down to freezing. But that was the reason that we put that in. So after today, maybe this is the first time that you create a morning ritual in your life, which means maybe I'm going to meditate, maybe I'm going to do yoga, maybe I'm going to walk, maybe I'm going to read, maybe I'm going to talk to a higher power, maybe I'm going to pray, whatever it might be. Even taking 5 minutes of each day to quiet your mind and set the intention for your day, I believe can make a huge difference. Sound like a plan?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.